Hi, this is Michael Swank. I'm the director here at the Bureau of Queer Art. I am super excited to bring to you in Volume 8 for Art Week Mexico City 2025, Theo Polymorphos. Theo's our cover of Volume 8, and I originally interviewed him for our summer edition, number 4, last year when we were in Ventura, California. But now he's on the cover because he's showing here in Mexico City for Art Week as part of Clavo Movimiento and at Casa Cultura Emilio Caballido. The show opens on February the 1st at the Casa Cultura and at Clavo Movimiento, the art fair, on February 7th through the 9th. But today I'm bringing you this rebroadcast of the interview from last summer to talk about the work that we have on Artsy right now and to learn more behind the scenes about the motivations, the context, the technical aspects of his work, and bring you inside of his studio. Please note that some of the music and some of the graphics have changed over this time, as they sometimes do. So you might see logos that conflict with our current logo, and you might hear music that doesn't match up necessarily with our current season. But at the core, we're always the Bureau of Queer Art. We're here as a queer and allied community of contemporary artists. And I hope that you'll join us by going to thebureauqueerart.com and applying today. We have so many exciting things coming up in 2025. Art Week is only the beginning. We'll see you at Clavo. We'll see you at the Casa Cultura. We'll see you online in Artsy. Please download the magazine in English or Spanish and download Volume 7, which is also part of this big extravaganza. That's right, because Photographia Volume 7 is in San Diego open right now, but opens also in these 2 different locations on February the 1st and February the 7th. So follow us on Instagram, keep in touch with us. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. And don't let us know what you don't like. We don't care. We're queer, we're here, and we're staying around. So to you, Mr. 47. So I'm super excited to present your work in the Bureau of Queer Art Volume 4 and our show in Ventura, California, which will open at Dama Gallery on June 1st through the 9th. Are you going to be able to visit us for the opening night?
No, I won't be able to make it, unfortunately. I know. I was a little slow on the uptake, but
it's all right. It's all right. I'm excited to talk to you about your work and to get to know a little bit more behind the scenes of what's going on conceptually, your process, and where this comes from, because they're gorgeous paintings. I mean, just gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah. In terms of the imaginative process, the inspiration could really come from anywhere, like a random lyric in a song that I heard, or something I saw out in nature. But I think the biggest inspiration I draw from is mythology and folk tales and things like that. But I always, for me, it's almost like a lived experience of myth, like reading the myths and kind of absorbing them and reflecting on them. And sometimes they'll show up in like my dreams, meditations and things like that. So I try to put my own little spin on it as opposed to just illustrating a story.
And so you're reading about these different mythologies, and then they're showing up in your dreams, and then they show up in your real life, and you produce them into these gorgeous paintings. What is the process of selecting? I mean, are you having someone model for these, and then you're using the photograph to?
Yeah. I usually hire a model, and then do a photo shoot, and we'll take dozens of photos and try different pose ideas. Sometimes there's a very specific pose that I know that I want, and sometimes I'm not even really sure. And I have like dozens of thumbnails, and I'm like, well, maybe the model will help me figure out what's the most evocative pose for this piece. And so we'll do that. And then once I have the photos, I take everything into Photoshop and start, tinkering around and painting digitally and photo bashing. Sometimes I'll take it out of Photoshop, I'll print something off and then work on that, and then take a picture of it, put it back in Photoshop. It's a very back and forth process. I don't like to be too dependent on digital tools, but it is like a huge time saver in terms of composing and recomposing things.
Well, I mean, I myself and many of the artists that I've worked with, we all sort of use Photoshop as a tool, as a way to visualize something before we put it onto the surface, so that we have a better idea, more confidence. Materials cost a lot of money as well, so
yes.
To kind of morph something and take that idea that was in your head and say, Oh, I'm so glad I didn't spend thousands of dollars in materials following that thread.
Yes, yeah. I really admire painters, like Odd Nerdrum or Titian comes to mind, like who are able to just draw straight on the canvas, make it look good, scrape it off, redo it when they change their mind about something. But for me, I try to be a little bit more efficient in my process and really just zero in on the idea from the onset and then execute.
What would you label your style of work aesthetically?
I roughly in the realm of imaginative realism,
Okay.
which is a pretty broad genre as a whole. But not so much in the fantasy sci-fi part of that, but more in like the mythological, spiritual.
Right. Because I mean, they do have the sense of the mythology, but they're definitely not fantasy based. I mean, they're you
Right.
know, I mean, I love the way that you're using masks. Does that come from a specific place within your reading of mythologies or studies?
Yeah. So I've always collected masks. Actually started when I was living in Mexico.
Ah,
And now I have like 5 dozen masks all over my house. And I always thought it would be cool to make my own masks. And for me, it's kind of symbolic of the way that the different faces that we put out into the world and how that is sometimes adaptive, a way for us to get what we want or a way of responding to a certain situation. But it could also be a way of expressing something that's like inside,
sure.
not something that's necessarily false. And for me in my work, I mentioned I don't like to be dependent on digital tools as much as possible. And so the tangible experience of like making masks for paintings, like I made this uh, painting of a man in a tree with a kingfisher mask. I actually have the mask right here. I can show you. Well, it's to come off.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
this took me about a month to make, and then I had the model wear it at the photo shoot.
wow, that's gorgeous. That adds another dimension definitely to the work. Do you ever display the masks with your painting as well, or
I plan to at some point.
okay?
Yeah.
And there's a when did you live in Mexico?
So this was 2009 to 2016,
Oh,
roughly,
wow. And where'd you live?
in Cuernavaca.
Are there artists that inspire you?
Definitely. I mean, two of the teachers that I worked with in my atelier training, Tanaya Sims and Christopher Remmers. I mean, they were like the reason that I decided to attend this atelier and start learning this style. Their work is like very kind of like dreamlike and evocative, and really admire that. But I also get inspiration, like I said, from Odd Nerdrum, and it seems that anytime I discover like a new painter that I'm not familiar with, and if I do some research, most of them have studied with Odd Nerdrum for some
Oh,
reason. So, and then of course the old masters, Waterhouse, Caravaggio, Titian.
yeah, I can see those influences in the work, especially Maggio, the way that you represent the body and the form, but also the way that you're lighting. It has this dark moodiness to it. It's really
Yes,
quite beautiful. I mean, dramatically beautiful.
yes, I love the drama.
I'm going to get you a T-shirt that says "I love the drama." How long have you been painting?
So I first started oil painting in, let's see, when was that? 2018.
Wow,
Yeah.
very recent. Wow. And were you doing other artwork before that, before oil painting, or?
Kind of, but not really.
Okay.
As a child, I was very creative. I always had like a set of markers or some paints in my hands, and then at some point in my early teens, I kind of just dropped it and stopped making art. And life took me in different directions. But I always had this feeling like something was missing, like I needed a creative outlet. And I tried different things, like creative writing. I would occasionally get out the watercolors and play around. But having no formal training, I was never really satisfied with the results.
Hmm.
So yeah, in 2018, I got a bit of a time where I was able to finally start taking figure drawing classes, and it just instantly clicked for me. I was like, I wasn't very good at it at first. I was like, this is what I need to be doing, and so I started painting after that.
Most people won't uh, persist beyond the bad moment and wait. Continue to use the discipline to try to get to where they imagine themselves to be as well. Is there like a goal that you have with your work that you're working towards currently?
Uh, Currently, I think my biggest focus is just continuing to unfold the vision that's kind of like locked up inside me and making progressively better work, more complex work, more kind of work that resonates with myself and other people.
Mhm.
Yeah, and kind of unfurling this myth. That,
Where do you, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. How does mythology fit into our modern moment?
that is a really good question.
Right?
I guess I'm of two minds about it because I do believe that time is a circle, and
Mhm.
some of the themes that come up in different mythologies from around the world are really universal and timeless in a way. If we can kind of just like strip away the facade that might be sort of alien to us living like a postmodern lifestyle, and really reflecting on that. But I also think that now is a really opportune time for artists and philosophers to think of like what are the new myths
Right.
as we live forward in this moment where technology has really taken off, and now we have artificial forms of intelligence, and what does it mean to be human?
Right. Yeah.
I think about this a lot, and I don't have easy answers at this point. I think for me, my inclination is more to kind of retreat into some mythical past, and that's where I feel better.
Do you find elements of the mythical past in your daily life as well, or?
Definitely, definitely. I see the archetypes, and I see the way that the gods, so to speak,
Mhm.
uh, play out in human relationships, and the way that people act, the way that I act, and my obsessions and my bad habits, and everything.
Is there a mythological story that you identify with as like sort of an image of yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. I see myself kind of refracted in a lot of different myths, but the one that I'm most kind of attached to is like the Dionysian cycle,
Which is
and the myths of Dionysus, and specifically the Orphic myths and the Orphic mysteries. And there's this whole like ancient esoteric religion that built up around this, talking about like the astral immortality of the soul,
mhm.
and what happens after death, and how to lead a good life until that point.
Right. And I mean, I imagine it also. Are you a religious person or?
I would describe myself as spiritual,
Okay.
but I do have a religious practice, so to speak, around these things.
Okay. I was just curious because Dionysus was practiced sort of as a religion, almost cult like, I believe at one time, right?
Yes, yes,
So
definitely.
it would be interesting to see how that would, because in these modern times, there's so much of a, I feel like there's a desperation for guidance and a disorientation around the religions that we already know. So you should start a cult in Florida. Um, Scientists will be happy to allow you to do that. So you could do anything you want. Difficult to live in Florida when with all the sort of it seems like the where all the political mayhem settles in the United States.
Yes, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm sort of insulated from all of that.
Mhm.
I work from home. I paint all day. I really don't have a lot of reasons to leave the house except to go to figure drawing sessions. But we see like different political stickers, and kind of see what people are doing, and thank God I don't have school age children and all of
Um,
that to contend with. The stuff that's happening in the Florida schools. But
I'd love to talk about the the mask that you showed us in the painting that it goes with, just to give a little bit of background with that painting, what the story is that you're telling through the painting.
the Kingfisher,
Yes.
yes, that I would say was the most involved creative process for me, because it all started. I practice a form of visual meditation where I go
Okay.
in, and there's like an imagined space that I inhabit, and in one of these visions, I encountered the spirit of Orpheus. And
Mhm.
Orpheus took me to this lake in the forest and showed me these kingfishers that were fishing by the light of the moon, and just kind of pointed and said, "Do that." And what that means, I don't know.
I
It was
know.
very strange.
It could be anything.
Yeah,
Um,
but I was just kind of reflecting on that, and a couple months later, I went camping, and we were camped by the edge of a river, and a kingfisher came and dove into the water and grabbed a fish and flew away.
wow.
that was the first synchronicity where I was like, this is a little bit odd. What's going on here? It felt significant to me. And so I just started working with, I guess it's a sort of like personal myth, and thinking, okay, what does it mean to do that? I'm not a kingfisher, but maybe if I wore a mask and, dove into the water, what would happen?
Right. Interesting.
And then, the moon was there, and then the sunset comes in, and there are snakes in the water. So it kind of relates to this myth about Dionysus, where he goes to this lake called Lerna, which is the same lake where Heracles fought the Hydra.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Dionysus myth, he enters the underworld through the lake on a mission to rescue his mother from the land of the dead.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I kind of like blended that with the king. Well, the name of the lake is the Alkyonian Lake, and the word Alkyone in ancient Greek means kingfisher.
Ah, okay.
So it all kind of got like jumbled up together into this new motif that I've been working on for a while now.
Very interesting. And when you complete a painting, then do you get a sense of resolution from these dreams and reference points, or does it create more questions for you?
Yes.
Which both?
when I finished that painting, there was a sense of finality. Like I manifested into the world and in pigment and oil the thing that I was meant to create. And I had other plans to make more paintings in that series using the mask, but I never got around to it. And I may still do that at one point down the road, but I think for now, like the Kingfisher shaman, or like whatever you might call him, he's happy diving into the water the way that he is.
Well, the work is beautiful and fascinating to look at. I find when I'm looking at it, and I've only seen them digitally so far, so I'm excited to see one actually in a gallery space. But I love the depth of them. Like I find myself just staring into it and wanting to know more of the story, creating a story for myself as well. In the process of just looking at these, I'm like, this is fascinating. I mean, really beautiful, gorgeous work. Really, really.
Thank you. I love to hear that, because that's really kind of my objective. Anytime I make a painting, I want it to be something that's a little mysterious, that draws you in.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not obvious what it is at first glance, maybe, and it invites the viewer to question, almost like a little bit hypnotic in a way.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, I think that's why the word magical came up with the realism for me, because I was like, I feel as though I'm being seduced into the painting. Like,
yes.
It's a tangible experience. Sometimes you just look at things because they're beautiful, and sometimes your response to something on the wall could be totally different than what is expected. But I find myself even digitally just staring at them. When I was putting your work up on Artsy for your solo show, I was just I'm like, oh, I need to know. I need to know more. This is incredible. So